Today, let's wrap up this timing belt water pump job on the Forester XT. Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for another installment of Project OG FXT. And it's been a fight, it's been a struggle. But this is the second part of our timing belt water pump endeavor. We got the timing belt out of the vehicle on the end of the last episode. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch that for sure, or you might be completely lost. But on this episode, I'm going to show you step by step how to install that new timing belt and water pump. Let's get in the garage and get some work done. I want to show you guys what I got for the timing belt water pump kit. It is the ASIN TKF 004, which is the specific kit for this car, a 2004 Forester XT manual. Let me show you what's in the kit. This is a pretty comprehensive kit. You get a little diagram, which we don't need. The torque settings might be really useful. That's really cool. This says specifically it's for a Saab 92X. That is freaking awesome. I've owned a Subaru. I think that's really cool. That's the car they selected to be the title car for the kit. But what you have in here, most importantly, is an ASIN water pump. A very important component. We're gonna put that on there. We did buy the OEM Subaru thermostat to put in, so we are gonna need that when we install it. So important stuff there. Under the wrapping, we have everything, a brand new tensioner, NTN. These are OEM equivalent or OEM parts, which is great. You've got every single pulley and idler that you're gonna need. Always replace these guys. You definitely don't need one of those to fail and have your engine have a valve piston conversation that shouldn't be happening. So go ahead and replace these. Here's our new timing belt, fantastic. Yep, Mitsubishi, which is the OEM one. You can see it marked there. I always thought that was funny because it's so close to Mitsubishi and they have an interesting symbol. So that's kind of cool. A little trivia, I guess. And then last but not least, our little ASIN timing belt sticker, which we'll put on the car. So we'll always know when to replace that timing belt and show that it was done on time. So really, don't cheap out, guys. Get one of these kits. It's the way to go. So time to put this fun stuff on the car. Time to remove all our pulleys and tensioners from the front of the engine. Everything's a 14mm or 12mm. With all the pulleys removed, and before you do the water pump down there, it's a good idea if you want to clean the front of your engine, now is the time before you open up that water pump. So let's go ahead and scrub everything down. It just gets a little gnarly down in there. You can see some built up crud here and there, so we want to take care of that. We don't want a dirty engine if we're going to put it all back together. So let's get it cleaned up in here before we do the water pump. Time to knock out this water pump. Should be highlighted on the screen. There are going to be 7, it looks like 10mm bolts holding it on. But before that, I like to take off the thermostat housing. Just a little easier to take it off while it's still mounted to the car. And then you have 2 coolant hoses coming in from the driver's side of the vehicle. You need to remove those first. So I'm going to pull those. Actually, I'll pull the thermostat housing first, then we'll pull those hoses, and then we'll take off the actual water pump. Probably gonna lose a little more coolant on this, so have a drip pan ready just in case. Here comes that coolant. Thermostat housing removed, we'll clean that up. Here's that old thermostat. Now I'm going to slide into the car and get those hoses off. Those hoses underneath were a pain in the butt to get off, but now we're clear to take the water pump out. Those 10mm bolts, let's get them. Magnetic tool helps you pull these bolts out that are recessed. All 6 bolts have been removed from the water pump. Time to pull it off of the engine. Definitely make sure you have a drip pan ready for this one. there's a third hose coming from the passenger side that you need to remove. I wish I would have caught that first. There we go. Got the third hose off. Now we can pull our water pump up. I just left that little hose on there. I can take it off. Got the old water pump next to the new water pump. Before I install the new water pump on the car, I'm going to go ahead and install the thermostat housing with the new thermostat. Subaru OEM, don't mess around with this, guys. Just go with the safe bet. And I'll put it all together before I put it back on the car to make it that much easier. This means we really need to clean up this thermostat housing. It is pretty gnarly. Yeah, let's clean that up. New gasket, new thermostat going in, and then we'll install it on the new water pump. So here I used the wire brush to shine up the thermostat housing so it looks a lot nicer. Will look great with our new water pump. Now we've got to put some gaskets on before we install the thermostat. So the ASIN timing belt kit does come with these gaskets. Your thermostat, new thermostat from Subaru will not, so just keep that in mind. You get a couple little interesting gaskets here. One of them actually goes to the water pump itself. Kind of fits right in here. You can see the outline for it. Gonna go right in this groove. No RTV necessary on this install, guys. I know a lot of vehicles do require, some RTV when installing water pumps, but just press all these gaskets in. They should be all you need. So that gasket's good. The next one's gonna be going around your new thermostat, which is a Subaru OEM one. Like so, and then you're going to go ahead and drop this in. You want to make sure the little nipple up here, kind of like a breather nipple, is going to be oriented at the top of where the thermostat goes in, so pointing straight up. That's fantastic. Your thermostat housing goes from left to right. That is also important to note. You want to line that up, and of course, absolutely of course, I have shined up the bolts so they look a little nicer when we go to install them. Start them like everything else by hand. Then you're going to use 10mm socket and tighten these down to spec. And there you go. That's our water pump and thermostat housing with new thermostat installed, ready to go in the car. So we're here at the water pump, and what a pain in the butt to put this thing in. I really had a lot of trouble keeping the gasket straight, getting the bolts on there. But more than anything is this little hose right here. And I took it off to remove it, but let's zoom in on it. It's that little elbow bend that kind of curves from the side. There you go, now you can see it. From the side of the water pump to the front of the car there, and connects. And boy, that thing is a pain in the butt. I don't know if there's a hack or an easy way to do it, but I had to basically fold it in half, slide it back there, and slide it on both sections at the same time. And what a pain in the butt that was. But anyway, we've got our water pump on the vehicle. And now you can see our nice shiny water pump all installed. Looking pretty good down there. Front of the engine looking a lot cleaner too. But next up on our list is going ahead and putting all our pulleys and idlers and tensioners back on the front of the engine to get this timing belt back on. Putting this timing belt back on is a real pain in the butt. So you want to start, obviously, the marks are there on the belt, as you can see. There's the dots for the crank. And you're going to go to the passenger side first, wrap around. What you want to do, a little strategy, is as soon as you do get the belt in place, lined up with your marks, you do want to put the little belt holder here, the little retainer that keeps it from popping out. That is built in to keep it from coming loose if you ever stall the car. There is one of those on every single cam except for the last one you're going to do, which is the top one over here on the driver's side of the vehicle. So as you work your way around, make sure you're installing these little clamps and they'll keep your sanity. It's really tough. I'm having a real hard go at this, but we are working through it and we'll get there. So the most I've gotten is 3 cams lined up. We don't have the small pulley. We'll put that in after the fact, and the tensioner. So, oh boy, let's keep going. And we've got our timing belt on. Again, some advice. A lot of the online instructional videos really skip over some very important stuff. So obviously start at the crank. As you do each one, you want to put this timing belt guide on to kind of hold your belt there so it won't jump on you. The other thing is too, there are those guides on every cam, the intake and exhaust on the passenger side and the exhaust on the driver's side, but there is not one on the intake cam on the driver's side. So the order you want to go is obviously starting at the crank, work your way around the intake cam on the passenger side, then the exhaust cam, and work your way around to the driver exhaust cam, then back up to the driver intake cam. That's how you want to put the belt on. It's a little bit of a stretch. I had a real issue getting around the intake cam on the driver's side, had to pull pretty hard, but you want to check your marks. The other thing you need is an inspection mirror because these marks are pretty hard to see. So grab yourself, you know, a handy dandy thing here, and you're just aiming down in there and just checking to see. You're also looking at these 2 marks here, which are awesome because you need to have these 2 marks lined up for the intake and exhaust cams on each side and your crank. So you will need a mirror to help you with the mark on your belt lining up with the cam, just like so. So everything's great. We are in perfect time now. So what I want to do is, after you tighten up all your tensioners, we're going to go ahead and pull off the Company 23 cam holding tool, and then we're going to go ahead and pull that grenade pin right out of the tensioner. And once we do that, I'm going to rotate the belt a few times, probably get it back to top dead center. Don't be scared if your marks don't line up. There's an uneven amount of teeth, so your marks aren't going to go back to where they should, but all your alignment marks, your timing alignment marks, should line up once you're back to top dead center. I always like doing this before I put everything back together and risk starting the car with something wrong. So let's do those things. Company 23 cam holding tool removed. Nothing moved, so our timing is still good. This thing is an absolute lifesaver. We pulled the grenade pin on the tensioner and everything is good after checking our marks. So what I like to do, like I said before, is go ahead and rotate this engine by hand, crank it around back to top dead center, reiterating again that your marks on the belts will not line up. You are looking to get back to top dead center, which I think is 4 rotations, and you want to see all your timing marks back to where they should be. So let's crank that by hand. Got to put the crank bolt back in, 22mm socket, and get it back to top dead center after 4 rotations. Excellent. After cranking the engine by hand, we got it back to top dead center. But what I wanted to point out is, look where the lines are. That should be the line that's on the crank, that dotted line there. That's now on the driver's side cam. Don't worry, remember what I said, odd number of teeth, and just the way the belt will be at a different place. What you are ensuring in this step is that you keep your alignment marks, so your timing marks are still there. Clear indication, like you can see over here on the passenger cam. You can see it lines up with the backing cover for the timing cover, and that's exactly what you need to do. Check all your marks after rotating a few times, and now we know our engine's in time, and when it cranks over and rotates, it is going to stay in time, and that's peace of mind before we put it all back together. Awesome. This timing belt and water pump job looks complete, guys. Let's put it all back together and hide all this beautiful work we did. And if your model Subaru comes with that little cap, go ahead and put that back on the driver's side camshaft sprocket. Use those little bolts. I think it takes 7 foot-pounds of torque to torque those down, so be very careful. And we've got our timing belt covers cleaned up and back installed on the Subaru. Looking good. All right, when tightening back down the crank bolt, I like to use the crank pulley holding tool from Company 23 again, because you're going to need that for the extra torque. Now the final torque setting is going to be 133 foot-pounds. Go ahead and set your torque wrench to that number and go ahead and crank on her until she clicks. Perfect. And now our crank bolt is torqued down. We've got our crank pulley on there, and we're ready to put our accessory belts back on. I've got the accessory belts on the Forester XT now. Something I want to share with you guys. Well, first off, the Continental belts didn't fit, so I sourced some Bando ones made in Japan. Gotta love that. So Subaru has one of the most intuitive systems to tighten your belts. Some cars it's kind of convoluted, but real simple here. You do your AC belt first, and that can be tightened with this tensioner bracket right here. Really simple. You just loosen this bolt down here so the pulley can move. And then as you tighten this one, the belt will get tension applied to it. And then you lock it in by tightening that pulley bolt. Same exact thing with the alternator belt over here, alternator power steering belt. You're going to tighten this down until it's the right tightness, and then you're going to go ahead and secure this bolt to lock it in. You want to have a little bit of deflection on your belts. Obviously, if you do too much, if you make your belt too tight, you could wear down your pulleys and your accessories and the bearings in there. Alternatively, you'll know if they're too loose because you'll tighten the car and get a real nice squeal out of it. Time to add coolant to our FXT. Now, this is where you find out if your water pump and everything was installed correctly. So fingers crossed we don't have any leaks, but we're gonna fill right here. Obviously go until it's full, and then we are gonna burp and bleed the system, which means we are gonna run this vehicle at operating temp enough to all the air bubbles come out and everything. And make sure everything's good there. You definitely don't wanna have any bubbles, air pockets. I know these engines are kind of famous for it. So the coolant I've elected to go with is going to be our Subaru OEM long life coolant. Newer models did use the super coolant, but this works fantastic. This is what's recommended for this year, the 2004 Subaru Forester XT. So let's go ahead and top this off. All right, you want to go till it won't drain anymore, and then we should be good to go. Now we're going to run the car through a couple heat cycles. The moment of truth has arrived. We're going to fire up the Forester XT, see if all our work has not been done in vain. Hopefully the timing belt's set all right. There's going to be no leaks, no oil leaks, no coolant leaks. We did water pump and thermostat. We don't want to see any leaks there. We're going to continually bleed the coolant system as it comes up to operating temp. We're probably going to let it do a couple heat cycles, make sure everything's good there. Add coolant as necessary. Have a catch pan underneath just in case it overflows. But other than that, let's go ahead and fire up our Forester XT. There's also going to be a lot of smoke because we put a ton of degreaser on this engine, so there's going to be a ton of smoke as it heats up the first time. So don't be shocked. Like I said, I'm going to let it come up to operating temp. We're going to get a lot of burn off of all the cleaning chemicals, and we'll keep topping off the coolant. Good sign. And here you can see all that beautiful smoke coming up from all the cleaner we used and the excess oil that went on the exhaust. That's going to take a little while to burn off, but don't panic.